Hi there. This is Mike Sweeney from sabercoaching.com, and I've been doing a lot of thinking lately about what it means to be a gentle man. I've been having these conversations through some training programs I've been going to with some true gentle men. And there's a difference between a man and a gentle man. It's been a long road for me. I grew up in a very, very kind of male-dominated household. It was just me and my brother. Default toilet seat position was up. My mom used to ask us if we got a bruise, if we needed to potentially amputate. I mean, don't get me wrong, she was loving, but it was definitely a male-dominated household. After that, I went into the military where I was in the US Cavalry, and it was a combat arms unit, so there were no women at all. And we would go to the field for weeks at a time and not see any women at all. It was challenging. And then over time, I've started to move in a different direction. I left the military. I started to work in a workforce that was men and women mixed. Eventually, I moved to a company where it was 80% women, female CEO. It was a really interesting transition. And I've had 3 daughters over the time. So those 3 daughters have certainly pushed me to grow and feedback and different workplaces. So I feel like I show up quite differently than I did with that default toilet seat position up. And lately, a couple people have said, hey, you're really woke. And I had to look it up. But once I looked it up, I figured out what it was. Another person said, hey, you're with it. And these are women that I work with. And I was really kind of surprised at that. And, one of the perspectives I have, especially given what's going on in politics, that I'm surprised that there are still male leaders sometimes. It seems like one of the things that I see male leaders working on a lot is listening and empathy skills. And my own personal perspective, at least from having 3 daughters and working with a lot of women, is that kind of comes out of the box. Women tend to have stronger listening and empathy skills. And I know I'm painting with a broad brushstroke, but that's been my perspective. And as I've shared that with a few people, they've given me feedback that, hey, look, not all guys are thinking like that. And I realized that there's a whole continuum from where I grew up to where I am today that I think a lot of men are on. And I didn't realize that I was a little further along. So we need education. And I think we as men need to figure out what's going on in the world and how do we want to show up. And there are a few keys that I know for sure. So the first is we need to think about like the awareness of what's going on, whether it's women's lib or Me Too or whatever you want to call it. Things are different. And I remember seeing a Facebook post where it was like the things that women think about before they go running at night. And it was a list of like 50 to 100 things. And then it had the things that men think about when going running at night. And it said, where are my shoes? And that was it. There's a lot of unconscious bias training that's going on too. And there's the story of the doctor and the car crash and the woman is a doctor and people assume that it's a man. And, my girls have brought things up to me like, hey, Dad, why is there NCAA basketball and NCAA women's basketball? Why is there an NBA and a WNBA? Why isn't there an MNBA? And I really didn't have answers to those questions. And for the guys out there listening, it's not because dunking is more interesting. Believe me, you don't want 3 sets of eyes with long hair trained on you breaking that argument down. It's a bias. And it's something that I think is going to change. So the first is just get aware that things are different showing up as a woman, showing up as a man, and be aware of that. The second is we need to build our presence. Whether you're meditating or whether you're working on emotional intelligence, just start to think about not being a bull in a china shop. So emotional intelligence really has 4 or 5 parts. Daniel Goleman wrote about this in Primal Leadership. Self-awareness, self-mastery, social awareness, relationship management, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship management. I think empathy is rolled up into that sometimes. But there are cues of awareness. And if we figure out how to make sure that we can show up in a way that we're grounded and present, we'll be able to start to see some of the social cues that are happening. And that'll let us choose our behaviors. So the next is listening. And this is really cutting 2 different ways. And I wanted to focus on this because there's a tactical piece to it and then there's a strategic piece to it. The tactical piece really is, am I not interrupting? Am I paying attention, nodding along, staying engaged? Am I maybe rephrasing what people are stating to confirm understanding? And rephrasing is not mansplaining. I'll get to that in a second because that is a thing. And There's a strategic part of listening, which is really just trying to see the other person and be genuinely curious and staying with not just what they're saying, but staying beyond and seeing the context behind the words that they're saying, and also the situation around it, and being able to maybe put yourself in their shoes a bit. And I still suck at this sometimes, and I'd say I probably suck at it often, but I consistently work on it, and I know that it's an important thing. So the next thing I'd say is just action. As we start to figure this out as gentlemen, we need to figure out what to do differently. So the first thing I know for sure is don't be gross. Like, locker room time, locker room language is over. Nobody's grabbing anybody by anything. And I think the pictures on the walls, the pinups, like, that stuff has to go, because it doesn't work both ways. The second is, it's okay to feel an emotion. Like, you see something welling up, it's okay. And I think that we as men need to be able to get beyond, mad, sad, and glad. And I don't want to sit here and talk about the plight of the man, but as men, we don't necessarily talk about emotions that much. It's not really a safe thing. If you talk about it with friends, it's a little bit tricky. But you have to be able to get into the whole wheel of emotions. Like, typically, if some sort of anger, it's being motivated by a fear. It's being motivated by something underneath it. And believe me, this is far from kind of scientific or psychological text language. But in my own experience, if you peel back mad, sad, and glad and figure out what's underneath it, you can share this. And it feels good. Another thing I'd say is just work smarter. Diverse teams are more effective. There's a lot of good articles. There's a good one by HBR, but try to figure out how to make sure that your workplace is diverse, because those teams do work better. Just make sure it's not a boys club. And then stay aware. If somebody's crying, go ahead and give them a tissue, give them a hug. Maybe not the Joe Biden hug, but connect with them. If they want to. I'm kind of defaulting here to, like, okay, just like respect space. But also, like, if you're on a date with someone and you're walking down the stairs to the parking garage and they don't know you very well, realize that they might be really frightened. So if it's a situation where maybe they're not comfortable. And also, I'm just starting to see that there's a lot of energy out there for guys to figure out, like, how do we show up in the world? And as I talk about this, a couple of my friends of mine and I are talking about how do we build the gentlemen of the world. And a lot of women are giving us kind of pats on the back saying, yeah, we need to do this. And we've been thinking about this sort of project. So if there's any gentlemen out there, or aspiring gentlemen, go ahead and hit me up in the comments and subscribe. Maybe we'll have more gentlemen podcasts or gentlemen videos that might resonate with you. I hope you have a good one.